Thanks for meeting us this afternoon, Mr. Zanardi-Landi.
It's my pleasure.
This year marks LV's 20th year in China. What would you say are the company's biggest milestones during these years?
Well, I think it's extraordinary to be here after 20 years. I think in Louis Vuitton we think it's gone very quickly, that's for sure. But we started in 1992 in Beijing, here in the basement of the Palace Hotel with a very small store. And we started off very slowly. The second store we opened in China was another 3 years later in 1995. We opened the first store in Shanghai, in Shanghai Center. And slowly we built a network of stores in China. What I think is very important is from the very beginning, from the first day, we decided when we entered China, we wanted to do it exactly the same way that we would do anywhere else in the world. So we came with a store which at that time was state-of-the-art of Louis Vuitton, exactly as if we were building a store in Paris or in any other major city of the world. We ran it ourselves, trained the staff, created a customer experience in the store, very much as if it was you were visiting a store in Paris. And of course today that seems normal, but 20 years ago that was really a revolution in China because no one was doing that, and it was really the very beginning. And we wanted to make sure from day one when we entered into China and when we started to have a dialogue with Chinese customers that they would see Louis Vuitton exactly as they would see it in Paris or anywhere else. And so that we've been very, very consistent. From that day, we've always operated our own stores and tried to create a customer experience in the stores that is exactly the same as you would have in Paris.
And I know that last year you had this big exhibition at the National Museum.
Yes.
So besides that, in between 92 and this year, what were some of the other highlights?
Oh, there were many, I think, extraordinary things. At the opening of the Dalian store, there was a China run here, which was we brought to China all these extraordinary automobiles from all over the world. And we had a rally that took place from Dalian to Beijing. Again, today, that sort of thing in China is quite commonplace, but at that time, it was something unique. It had never happened in China before. There were towns and villages along the way where the local government was giving a holiday to the people in the town so they could come out and see all the cars passing through. And it really was like a national event. And of course, it all ended on Tiananmen Square with all the cars parked on Tiananmen Square. And it really was an extraordinary event. Today, maybe it would be more difficult to do that, but it was an exceptional moment. And I think that was really one of the first things that really started to put our brand and what we're about into the minds of people in China. And it was a lot of fun too, and I think a lot of people enjoyed it with us. Of course, we've had many, many extraordinary moments, and we've tried to bring many different things to China. One that of course, I remember very strongly because I was here was in 2004 when we opened our first what we call global store, which is a store that has all of the different métiers of the Louis Vuitton brand, including ready-to-wear and shoes and watches and jewelry, as well as obviously leather goods and travel goods, which is the core of what we do. In Shanghai, in Plaza 66 in 2004, it was really a magical weekend because we opened the store at the same time as the Grand Prix, in the first Grand Prix in China. And of course, so Shanghai was really in a buzz at that moment, and a lot of people had come from everywhere. And we opened this store, which I think, in terms of a customer experience, brought to China for the first time a luxurious retail environment like nothing that anybody had ever seen here before, and really set a new marker for luxury retail. And a lot of people come back to me and say, we were there in 2004 and we saw Louis Vuitton open that store, and it really changed the whole thinking about the luxury market in China. I mean, at that time, that store was one of the most extraordinary stores that we've done in the world. And people were coming from everywhere to look at it. And I don't know if you remember that there was a trunk on the front that was the original facade of the store while we were building it. And that photograph went all over the world and was published in magazines and newspapers all over the world as I would say, a sense of showing how fast the Chinese economy was growing, how fast things were changing in China. And I think at that point, Vuitton also became very much a reference and a marker for the extraordinary economic success of China that has taken place here over the last 20 years. That was certainly one of the highlights. And I'm hoping that this year, when we reopen the next version of Plaza 66, which has been 2 years in the works, we will bring a new customer experience to China. And indeed, I think this time it won't be just to China, but it will be a world-class experience in the sense that people will really look at that and go, that's a new reference for what will happen in the luxury world. So we're very excited about that, and that's the next store that's coming in July.
So you would say that Louis Vuitton in the past 2 decades in China has helped set the tone and trends for the luxury market in China?
You know, I mean, from the very, very beginning, Yves Carcel, who you've met, as the chairman of Louis Vuitton for the last 21 years, he's always been in love with China. And he's always thought from the very beginning, along with a few of us, that China would eventually, in those days we used to say eventually, become either the most important or a very, very important destination for Louis Vuitton in the world and its clientele. Of course, I think even 20 years ago when he started saying that, and even 10 years ago when I started and we started saying that, we never envisaged what really was going to happen, because it's been an extraordinary journey in the last 10 years. However, we've always very consistently believed in China and very consistently believed that this is a very important place for us to be. And we've always taken China very, very seriously. And so our approach has been very consistent. We've always continued to, it's not only a question of investing, but it's a question of really trying to understand Chinese customers and to really build our brand and the desirability for our brand in a way that Chinese customers can understand and grow with us, I would say. And I would say probably to all the people I've spoken to in the last months about the 20th anniversary of Vuitton here, the comment I get most from people is very interesting, which is that, 20 years ago I didn't know anything about luxury brands. I'd never heard of Louis Vuitton or any other luxury brand. And of course, today things are very different. But yours is the first brand that I touched, the first luxury brand that I ever came across. It was the one that touched me first. And I feel I grew up with your brand. And over the last 20 years, I've watched myself grow, I've watched Louis Vuitton grow, I've watched the economy in China grow. And I feel there's a synergy in that, and that we've all grown together to some extent. And I think that's a very important place for us to be, is that we have a very, very strong group of customers who we are very close with, who believe that together we have grown up together in China. And I think that's a great place to be. It's something we're very proud of, and something that we're very happy about. And certainly puts a great challenge on us in terms of where we go for the future and what we do next. But I think that is unique because of our time here and the energy that we put into China in the last 20 years. And that's really a very, very strong comment we get from everybody. And I think that's great.
How much do you attribute LV's success here to the brand being one of the first luxury brands to enter China?
Well, I think it's always important to be one of the first. And I mean, Louis Vuitton has a philosophy, I would say, of pioneer spirit. I mean, we are a brand that's all about travel, but travel in many different ways. I mean, travel can be very literal in the sense of I go from point A to point B. It's not very sexy. But what is very interesting about travel is this sense of your life is a journey, and your life is travel. You travel from birth to death. And a very strong sense of how you travel to gain experience in your life, to enrich who you are, to experience different cultures, to experience different places. And I think Louis Vuitton itself is that, in the sense that we started off as a French brand. We are a French brand. And Louis Vuitton himself started off in Paris, and then he opened his first store in London, and then in New York, and all of that was very exotic in the 1850s and 1860s. But today we're looking at markets that perhaps he would have never dreamed of. But, for example, as you know, we opened a store in Mongolia 2 years ago, and people said to us, well, why would you open a store in Ulaanbaatar, of all places? And we said, well, because we are about travel, and we are about experience, and Ulaanbaatar is one of the most extraordinary places in the world to visit. And it's one of the few nomadic cultures where travel is at the center of Mongolia. It's a very nomadic culture. This year we're going to open our first store in Kazakhstan, which again, people are amazed to hear that Louis Vuitton will open a store in Kazakhstan. We're going to open a store in Jordan, which is another new country that we will enter this year. And every year we're always looking at one or two new countries that we will enter into, because it is very much the spirit of travel and the sense of enrichment and the sense of how we go. But what I think is also very important is being the first in is not everything. What is very important is that once you're in, if you enter into a market, is to be very consistent with what you're doing, and to make sure that you continue to develop. I mean, coming into China 20 years ago, yes, of course, we were one of the first brands, but there were other brands that entered into the market at somewhat the same time. But what I think was there was a very, very strong belief in the future of China, which made us very strongly focus on the market. And something that we understood very, very early on is that Chinese people, when it comes to purchasing anyway, have a very strong sense that everything outside China is better. Because infrastructure is better in Hong Kong, infrastructure is better in Europe, there's always this sense of everything outside is better. And one of the things that we wanted to change, and it was really a goal, was to say to Chinese customers, no, that's not true. What you find here in China is as good or better, because it's probably newer, than anything you can find outside. And so we went with a philosophy of building stores and building our brand here in a way to say that, no, when you go to your store in Beijing, in Dalian, in Qingdao, in Urumqi, you will find a Louis Vuitton store that is as good as anywhere else in the world, with a choice of product that is as good as anywhere else in the world, with products that are available in Paris are available here at the same time. And we have a worldwide policy of always making sure that we have in China the same products that we are launching in Paris the same week. So there's no lag, there's no nothing. So what we realized in China is that for customers here, of course, the experience in the store is very important, and to find the dream, I would say, of Louis Vuitton. But also this very important point about choice is to find in China exactly as what you would find outside. Now, of course, you can tell customers that, but they won't believe you. Yeah. And so it takes a long time to get people to understand that actually what we're saying is true. So that when you go to a Louis Vuitton store anywhere in China, whether it's from Suzhou to Shenyang, to Dalian, to wherever, Wuxi, to any of our stores, you find a selection of Louis Vuitton product as good as or better than many other places in the world. And I think, today, one of the differences is, as people visit China and they see the luxury world in China, they're amazed to find that actually what is here is actually often very, very much better than what you see in what might be considered the fashion capitals of the world. So that's an extraordinary thing, and that's been always a very strong philosophy of what we do.
It's an interesting thing that you mentioned that, because I also wanted to ask about that, because we understand that a lot of Chinese are doing their shopping for luxury products overseas. So how are you bringing home the message that you don't have to do that because everything you can find there, you can also find here? How are you trying to address this issue?
Again, what is very, very important is always to have a very close relationship with your customers. And in each city that we have a Louis Vuitton store, and for the most part, we build one store per city, except for the very large cities like Shanghai and Beijing. And what we try to do is to have a very close relationship with our customers in that city. And of course, for customers, it's very important to have a personal relationship. It's not that even they may love our brand, but also they love to be in the store and they know the staff and the staff know them by name and recognize them. And that sense of personal connection is very, very important. Of course, when you travel overseas, it's different because you arrive in a different city that you may not be that familiar with, but you don't know the staff in the store doesn't know you. It's a fact of life. So the experience is different, which is we try to overcome that as best we can, but it's clear if you're at home and you walk into the store where everybody knows you and greets you by name, and it's not, that we're looking you up in a CRM database or something, but it's really genuine in the sense of we really know you and we're very, very happy to see you. That's a very personal experience and can't be matched anywhere else. So that's very important. So a lot of customers, they go, yes, I can go to Hong Kong, I can go to Paris or whatever, but they love to visit their stores at home because of this personal relationship, which is really important. Of course, everybody talks about pricing in China. There are reasonably high import duties and very high VAT in China, which of course has an impact on the price. Of course, we would love to see that change. We would love to be able to have pricing in China that's the same as other markets in the world. But unfortunately, we're unable to do that today. But what I think is very important is the sense of how we can build relationships with customers, how we can give them an experience in our stores that is exactly as you would find anywhere else in the world. And that's really the key to it. And we've always tried to maintain that. So what we've actually found is while, yes, there is a great sense of competition outside in the sense of a lot of people are, as visa restrictions are disappearing for Chinese travelers and traveling is becoming easier and cheaper, of course we see many Chinese traveling all over the world, and we see them in all sorts of extraordinary places that we never expected to find them. We see huge numbers of Chinese traveling in places like Dubai and cities that you don't necessarily expect to find lots of people traveling in. But at the same time, business at home is still very good, and people still appreciate very much that sense of personal service. And I think actually all of us living in this world today, as the world economy becomes more globalized, that sense of personal experience becomes something that's very important to everyone and transcends the issues of price. And it's more a sense of, okay, I prefer to go in the store I know where the people know me and will look after me properly and appreciate to see me, and rather than an experience which is not the same outside, because obviously the people don't know me because it's the first time I visit or I'm not visiting very often. So it's different experiences depending what's important to you. But I think for Chinese customers that is very important, yes, that sense of, and also it's a question of language as well, and particularly in China because, yes, of course everyone is speaking Mandarin, but dialect is very important in cities, and people like to be able to talk in their local dialect to people in the stores, and it gives them a sense of also, it's a very personal experience. It's particularly true in Shanghai. So, when they travel outside, yes, they go to Hong Kong or they go to Paris, yes, you can probably find Mandarin speakers in the store, but not so much people speaking dialect. And so it's different. Again, it's not quite as personal experience, that's for sure.